hack because the market is at another inflection point. We're going to start with the Bitcoin issue. Like it or not, it is the dominant trend in this ecosystem. So let's start with the latest announcement from MicroStrategy, specifically discussing the risk of being excluded from the majority of equity indexes. I'm sure many of you have seen this. It is huge news. It's really big. But the funny thing is, it's not unexpected. It's something we've been warning about repeatedly on this show. And what I think is very important is the timing of how this announcement comes out, because, they've known these risks for so many years now. And what's happening is simply the moment when the narrative can't be contained anymore. And I think that's why they're starting to talk about this. You got to really look through the lens here. Every shakeout that you see, every liquidity event, everything you're seeing in the markets is really manufactured risk. We see the same patterns. None of this is organic. So it's been part of this long-term process designed to redistribute wealth, power, consolidate liquidity. And, Bitcoin may still go higher for several different factors and speculative reasons we don't want to talk about today, because it is the most engineered trap in this entire ecosystem. And I still believe it is the greatest distraction, keeping people really focused on the wrong asset, the wrong narrative, and of course, the wrong future for where this is all going. The real story does sit with XRP and other utility-focused networks that aren't caught in this engineered cycle. They're coupled to it right now, but there will be a decoupling later on. It's not going to be tied to any of the systemic shakeouts that we do see, because this is really the backbone of what comes after compliance takes full effect. So the stage is being cleared, not really for Bitcoin, but for the next phase of the monetary infrastructure. And this is what institutions have been quietly preparing for. And that brings us to something the mainstream refuses to question. For instance, why is Tether suddenly using profits that it's been getting from its stablecoins to buy gold, for instance? And that narrative alone should raise the alarm for anyone who understands how deeply embedded, like the deep state, actors are in the crypto ecosystem. And we do see outflows from BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, and that's resulting in more liquidations that will eventually cascade across the market. So you may see us go lower. Listen, there's just so much to talk about, and we're going to cut through all the noise. Edo, it'd be great for you to just bring us up to speed on your findings, and we'll kind of break everything down piece by piece, where liquidity is moving. And we'll talk also about the driver of the next leg in this cycle. And it really does tie us to stablecoins. Edo, please take it from here. I'm going to figure out this camera issue.
Yeah, first, thanks for your insights, Versan. Welcome, everyone. We do want to have you on camera, so take your time to fix that issue. So the first thing I want to point out is that right now we see short-term relief on the markets. It does seem that this, I guess it was $81,000, seems to be working as the bottom, the temporary bottom for BTC. So we can expect a major rally, perhaps to $94,000 or to $95,000 for Bitcoin. However, that doesn't invalidate some of the bearish claims I have made on mid and long term, and we're going to be discussing that with further details. I also see some people asking about the XRP ETFs. Yes, we can also briefly talk about that. We have Franklin Templeton and Grayscale joining the XRP ETFs party. If you follow me and Versan, I will not speak for him. He can give his insights later, but we know that ETFs are not going to be the pivotal reason for why XRP is going to reach higher prices, but that can be a small piece on the puzzle. It's something to be excited just on the short term. It's not something that's going to contribute for XRP to go for $10 or $100 or $1,000, something for the future. Now, there is something interesting, and is that, as Versan said, JP Morgan is indeed warning of MicroStrategy dislisting from major equity indicators, indices. So this is something very concerning, and we are not talking about a hypothetical scenario. Okay, this is already a scheduled decision. This is a scheduled decision that will take place on January. I don't precisely remember if it's January 10 or January the 16th. I do have to double check that. I'm gonna do that once Person is talking. I will just quickly have a look. So this decision is gonna take place 2 months approximately from now. So we might see MicroStrategy getting this listed, and that's something very concerning for Bitcoin, because let's face the reality. The BTC average purchase price is around $72,000 for MicroStrategy. It means that they have been accumulating BTC on average of that price. They even bought BTC last week above $100,000. They bought for $102,000, so that also increases their average BTC purchasing price. They bought around 8,000 BTC. Now, why is that so concerning? Why there is this huge systemic threat for Bitcoin? Every time Bitcoin always goes down at least 10 or 15%. So if it happens, which it always happens in history, if you go for BTC history, there's not one single time in history where it has not retraced at least a 10 or 15%. That means that BTC would fall below the average purchase price of MicroStrategy, and that would trigger forced liquidations, because the creditors, they simply don't care about diamond hands or whatever Michael Saylor's strategy is for holding long term. If it does drop below the average purchasing price, we might see these forced liquidation events, and of course that will perhaps create a death spiral for BTC, because once liquidation starts, once the sharks smell blood on the streets, and we can read the sharks, the Wall Street, the creditors, of course Michael Saylor is going to be forced, not Michael Saylor himself, but MicroStrategy is going to be forced to start liquidating their BTC position. So there is this major systemic threat for BTC that is being absolutely overlooked by the majority of people. And when you see headlines like this, like JP Morgan warns about something, usually he's not just making a prediction, or usually they are preparing the subconscious mind of the masses. Hence why they come with these headlines. You know, they have to warn us about what are their future plans. Now, what is very interesting is that I also started to make some connections, and I have to be careful when talking about this subject, but you remember there is this entire dormant BTC wallets, the 80,000 dormant BTC, which later on became much more than 80,000 dormant BTC, Satoshi era coins. It happens that these BTC are offloaded on the open markets and with non-disclosure agreements. Sorry, I wanted to say OTC, not NDAs. So it's interesting that MicroStrategy keeps buying this on paper. They say they bought 8,000 BTC at $102,000, yet the price continuously goes down. So imagine that they are using money that doesn't belong to them. They are taking loans, they are taking credit, and now they are buying this BTC. And my new theory, and I also want Versan to expand on this. I actually tag you, Versan, on Instagram. I think you have seen one of my posts about that. Yes, I do post on Instagram now. I don't have Twitter anymore, so that's the place I can write something. And my conclusion is that what they are doing is the bubble is about MicroStrategy buying this BTC that is actually the dormant BTC from Satoshi era coins, which likely government wallets, and then the ones that are absorbing this is Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy. But the interesting thing is that they are not using their own money to do that. Yep. So you see how the bubble goes. And Versan, please expand from here.
Holy crap. Okay. Listen, I agree with everything you said completely. I actually wrote a detailed article on X trying to break down the entire Bitcoin narrative and how it just doesn't add up. In that article, I try to elaborate and explain how Bitcoin structure is set up as exit liquidity, and that's quietly engineered around Bitcoin and Ethereum too. But based on everything we have uncovered, it's for sure. It would take hours to unpack here, but we've reached a clear conclusion that Bitcoin's role is changing, et cetera, et cetera. But the first possibility of what I see happening here is that Bitcoin is becoming a tool for sovereign debt settlement, meaning it's going to be a mechanism to help finance the infrastructure into utility-driven infrastructure. And that, that it's potentially, that's where Ripple's getting all their cash from, for instance. So again, exit liquidity using spectators and spectators, their funds to finance the infrastructure for the future. The second thing is it's far more uncomfortable. But that's why people are always encouraged to hodl, which in my opinion is still one of the dumbest slogans ever created in crypto. And, that's what they're doing to position the masses really as exit liquidity for institutions, entities, and all the actors who have already moved with real utility assets, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think in the comments, we're going to see later on a lot of clueless reactions, and that's totally fine. I get it. But people do need to understand something, that, the early Bitcoin holders who refuse to sell are actually being set up as the final buyers of government debt. And that means they're going to be taking on toxic assets while being given the illusion of wealth. Okay. So essentially, Bitcoin is really going to be the last link in a collapsing chain, I would say, designed to settle liabilities for every institution moving forward. So if you know how to play the Bitcoin game, treat it like that, as a trade, get in, get out, walk away with other spectators' money, because that's what the rich are doing. The real exit liquidity story is not a theory, in my opinion. I think they're going to rug pull this shit whenever they're ready to do it, and they're going to migrate into the new system. And the scary thing is that, yes, this game they're playing with Bitcoin is indeed multi-dimensional chess, you could say. But the overall majority of Bitcoin holders, they still have no idea what they're involved in, because they're still thinking in headlines, not in frameworks. They're not thinking about infrastructure or how people invested in the World Wide Web in the very beginning. And that's exactly why we try our best, including you, the audience here, to take a step back and look at the whole framework and what they're actually building. Okay. And you start to see that the pattern is quite obvious. It's just sad that so many people need a mainstream headline to confirm some of the things we're talking about here. And that just tells me that most people in this ecosystem in Bitcoin really are spectators. They're not investors, because the idea is to really connect the dots before the world has to tell you what the narrative is, right? So Bitcoin, I think its role is going to be revealed over time. Ties us into everything you said over there. But like I said, I think it's exit liquidity, and that's how they're treating these investors.
Yeah, and the narrative of MicroStrategy selling BTC starts to gain traction. So I pulled out here the data. So the average purchasing price, now to be very specific, it's $74,433 per coin. And I also found on the predictions market. So let me just open here. 1 second, I'm sharing the screen. And even on Polymarket, is the predictions markets, they are giving already 18% chance that MicroStrategy starts selling any BTC by June the 30th, 2026. Actually, this was much higher just a couple of days ago. So if we see further corrections, these numbers, they will, of course, increase exponentially. So right now, it's quite a conservative estimation at 20%. So this narrative really starts to gain traction. And I am 100% with you, Versan. I think Ethereum is not the chosen one. Bitcoin is not the chosen one. I also think the entire ERC20 ecosystem, which implies the cryptocurrencies that are built on top of Ethereum, I don't think they will stay around for that long. I think this cycle has already proven that most of those assets has failed. Even assets that used to have real users and an entire ecosystem in the previous bull run, they already started a migration towards more not only energy efficient blockchains, but blockchains that actually have a higher transaction speed more transactions per second, and that's the case for XRP, that's the case for XLM, that's the case for XDC. So I really think we're gonna have once we see a major collapse for either Ethereum or BTC, this capital has to flow towards a new ecosystem. It's not going to just be sitting still. And I am 100% sure the ecosystem is going to be initially XRP, but at some point it's going to reach XLM ecosystem as well. And right now we see ETFs are also gaining traction on XRP. I know it's a hot topic for today, so I can bring this one to the screen. And we do have two major XRP ETFs that are gaining traction. One of them is Franklin Templeton, and the other one is Grayscale. And if I am not mistaken, it's already live, and hence why we have seen XRP outperforming the markets today. It's up like 5%. And this just proves our point, right? ETFs can contribute on the short term for price appreciation, but honestly, 5% is not what we are looking for. That only fuels more speculation. What we are waiting for is utility. That's what I am waiting for. That's why I am invested on XRP and XLM. And utility is something that doesn't happen overnight. That's why we are not thinking about what's going to make the ETF on what the ETFs are going to cause on XRP's price for next week. If we're going to be at $2.50 or $2.70, I don't think that's necessarily mean anything for us, and that's why we are not paying that much attention for the ETFs. What do you think about that, Versan? You are muted, by the way.
I was saying I made my point on ETFs. I really don't care for them much. ETFs are supposed to, what they really do is they create artificial scarcity by locking up supply. And that kind of goes against the very liquidity dynamics that give XRP its value. So I do think the ETFs are really a mechanism to bring regulated capital from traditional markets on chain. And that's how you could do it, by promising people exposure, but not actually giving them control to participate in the ecosystem. It's a whole different discussion. But the ETF, in my opinion, still stands. It does, have a conflict of interest with the dynamics that give XRP its value, because you got to think about this very closely and carefully, okay? Because think about this: if XRP is trapped in the ETF, that means it's less utility driven demand exists. That means the weaker the foundation is, really, because, and it makes perfect sense if you think about it, because in this ecosystem, and even Franklin Templeton talked about this the other day. I posted a tweet on this. The CEO, she was saying, in this kind of world where the dollar is losing its reserve status, but it's being eaten away little by little, we need a system, and she's referring to XRP, even if she doesn't say it, where we need a free floating currency. And when you look at the global adoption of XRP, it was supposed to demonstrate, number one, how utility drives demand independently of speculative instruments like Bitcoin or an ETF. That's where there's a conflict of interest. And the other thing is XRP, for it to function the way it's supposed to, it needs to be not trapped, and that's what the ETF does. It warehouses assets like gold, like silver, and that's why you have these ETFs. So it doesn't really promise the underlying asset or the use case of it. It simply warehouses it and provides exposure. So all I'm saying to everybody, I really don't care about the ETFs, but you're better off owning the underlying asset than the ETF itself, because you're not participating in the ecosystem. You're just exposed to it and what others are benefiting from, I guess. So ETFs will certainly bring more. It could have some impact on the XRP price, but then again, XRP, for it to reach a higher price, it needs to be free floating. So that's the conflict of interest. If anything, I see it as a regulatory detour, sure to incentivize people to have the exposure roll over their capital instead of taking control of their capital and owning the underlying asset again. So who benefits from an ETF? It's the big banks, of course. And more importantly, it's the intermediaries who are telling you, hey, go put your money with iTrust, go put your money with these institutional grade custody. So somebody is benefiting as an intermediary on very heavy fees. I talked about this last week. I mean, we've been offered, I've turned them down. So that's what the ETF is all about. It's about giving other people a little bit more control and allowing people to make money on those fees.
I totally agree, Bersan.
It's the
I
truth.
think I think the only thing we can take from this is that yes, Wall Street has its eyes on XRP. You do have institutional interest on XRP. I think on the United States you only have spot ETFs for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think XRP is the third asset to have a spot ETF. So yeah, we can take something positive out of that, but definitely I think nobody should be interested on get. It's not a financial advice, but I think you should have custody of your own digital assets and not purchase XRP through an ETF. I think that's completely contrary even to XRP's, let's say, there's no official white paper, but XRP's original use case, as Versan explained previously. And by the way, even the fact that Bitcoin is having its ETFs, that's already contrary to Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's just further confirmation that BTC is not working properly as it should be, which is to be a currency. But we know that the high transaction fees and the fact that it consumes a lot of energy, high energy consumption, and slow speeds, that makes it impossible to become a currency. And that's why XRP, one by one, solves every single one of BTC flaws. Now, coming back to, I have on the screen here is not a meme coin chart, by the way, it's just MicroStrategy shares. It's actually down 52% in the past month. So that's why they are likely considering to actually take that decision to deslist MSTR in January. So that's something that can also contribute for further downwards movement from BTC. And I just going to give my 2 cents here on what I think is going to happen to the markets on the short term. I do know a lot of people are looking for entries. They are looking to buy more XRP, and they also want to know it's happening here. So looking for the charts, definitely there is no strong support levels yet on the chart. So as I said in the beginning, I expect BTC to have a short rally, perhaps to $92,000, $95,000. But we need further indicators to turn on the upside. So are we fully entering a bullish mode right now? Absolutely not. However, there is something positive. It indeed found a bottom at approximately $81,000. And it's funny because a lot of people think that we have this view on, people think because I understand the flaws of BTC that I am praying that this will go to zero, but it's quite the opposite. I don't want to see BTC collapsing. I'm just pointing out to factual information. I also don't want you to trust everything we say here. Always have a critical mind and think for yourself. Take the information we provide for you here on the Turning Point and use this to take your own conclusions. But I am not optimistic about BTC either on the, as I said, we might have a short-term rally, but for me to come here and say that we're going to break $150,000, we need a lot of other indicators to improve on the charts. And one of the few things that can actually reverse this condition is perhaps more liquidity being injected on the markets. And I want Versan to share some insights about that.
Yeah, well, the stable coins are the new source of liquidity of these global markets. It doesn't get a lot of attention, really, the mechanism behind what they're doing. But see, the more liquidity that gets parked in stable coins, the more firepower there is to actually drive the markets higher. That's because there's a mechanical fact over there, and that's really half the story. But stable coins do have a double-edged nature that still people are, I think, figuring it out. Think about this, because central banks and financial institutions, they rely on artificial liquidity cycles and debt restructuring to manage these markets. Stablecoins fundamentally change the dynamic of the conversation and the architecture, because every stablecoin is issued and backed by treasuries. That means for every USDC or RLUSD or Tether that mints a stable coin, it creates new demand for government debt. That essentially debt becomes collateral base for the next liquidity cycle. And I think this is how the establishment found a way to kick the can down the road. I keep seeing in the comments and from other content creators here that the 4-year cycle is over, and that's absolute BS. It's not. They found a way to extend the game, and it confirms that the market is going higher from here on out. What they've been doing is actually using the panic and emotionally triggered people in this ecosystem to turn their fear into profit. That's a whole different discussion as well. But I'm going to explain in detail a little bit more about how the next bull cycle is going to be far more aggressive. It's going to be faster, more violent, and there is other reasons why we can talk about why it's going to be short-lived. But ultimately, the new driver of the markets are going to be stable coins. Maybe in a year or two, maybe in the next like 8 months, there's going to be a realization that, hey, you know what? These stable coins are tied to toxic assets, and that's US debt. So ultimately, it's, again, a short-term lifeline for the United States to keep the demand for treasuries. And that's a whole different discussion as well. But that's going to drive the market up. So I do think we're going higher. And this is a great opportunity for people to really be recalibrating their strategy as far as like buying those dips, as people would say, getting ready to buy some gold, some silver, just putting cash around to work. And we are going to be able to ride this thing on the way back up. And that's a whole different conversation as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I get a lot of questions. People often ask me, should I buy XRP now? Should I wait for the dip? And honestly, if you have a long-term mindset, I don't think you really should care about buying XRP at $2.20 or at $2 or $1.95. Honestly, if you take the long-term perspective, that will not change nothing down the road. It's just the same thing for the people who bought, let's go back on time, a decade ago, the people who bought BTC, they shouldn't be worrying if they bought BTC at $500, $600, or $800, right? Considering all of the upwards potential that it had 10 years ago. Of course, now the golden era of BTC is over a long time ago. Now, what you can do, and it's not a financial advice, but you can just DCA if you don't feel comfortable. If you have, let's say, $10,000, because I know there are people who are new to the channel, perhaps they don't have any XRP. So I guess a decent approach is just to DCA and perhaps divide your entries by like 4 different entries, $2,500 at current levels, and then wait either for a correction or either for upsides, and then you can just DCA, and you're going to increase your position without having this psychological burden that you bought all your XRP at $2, and then if it's back to $1.60, you are down quite a few percent. And however, I think this strategy, I have been using this for the past years. Of course, I have been doing that when XRP was 50 cents, 70 cents, 40 cents. However, as I understand the long-term potential of XRP, whenever I have some liquidity aside, I just keep accumulating more of this, and I just don't really care if I am paying $2.20, $2 or $1.80. Just to clarify, because I see a lot of messages about that, I want to just send a special message to an Italian friend of mine that is here in the comments. It's called Morris. He has a very popular YouTube channel. Welcome. And Versan, any thoughts about the DCA perspective that I said?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Sorry, I'm a little slow today. Yeah, I do. The situation hasn't changed, man. I mean, this is exactly why on the way down, I just keep using these opportunities to dollar cost average into everything. You know, the world is changing. And I put a tweet out today, and it's so powerful because, you know, they're devaluing the currency. And when you devalue currency, you don't just devalue money, you devalue society. So the world is changing, our monetary system is changing, our behavior is changing as a result of the monetary system changing, both individual and institutional. Everything's evolving faster than most people can keep up with, right? And that's problematic. That means there are these massive changes going on in the world right now, and this is the like a rare opportunity for all of us to pause, to reflect, to make these deliberate adjustments in our lives. And we have to be disciplined. We have to have actionable intelligence and strategic planning. Really, if you do prepare now and take these opportunities to reflect, you're going to be able to navigate the inevitable collapse and the transition from the old system to the new. So I do agree with you, but the thing is, it's problematic that people are working harder and harder for less and less. And the real problem within that context is that, the money is devaluing faster than you can earn it. So the window of opportunity to make investments is closing very fast. We can all confirm that fiat currency isn't what it used to be. So that's over, in my opinion. And they're already starting to talk about this on mainstream news. That just tells me that, hey, the party is really over. Because when they start talking to the people about this, the masses, typically means some structural changes are coming. So, take advantage of every opportunity you have to deploy your wealth, your capital into assets that will work for you as the system is collapsing and transitioning. You need to have some liquidity aside, but more importantly, you need to have the exposure to these systems that are going to be at the forefront of a tokenized economy. So, in my opinion, I said this last week, but it's never been easier to make money in this violent and volatile economy because, if you're paying attention and connecting the dots and doing the research, you're going to be able to trend forecast where this is going, where money is going, not where it's coming from. And, I think overall, besides being a great reset or a wealth transfer, it feels like a great heist. They're putting all the infrastructure in place to really consolidate power and consolidate wealth. So you can't afford to mess this up, right? You really can't. And we've been so early on these warnings about these trends. And the message is simple, like stop wasting time, take action, and speak to somebody who can help you position yourself correctly.
Totally agree, Versan. And there is one specific cryptocurrency right now that is at discounted prices. I think you know which one I'm talking about, right? I'm going to bring the chart here. And I am
Yep.
sure before I bring the chart, you already know which one I'm talking about. Just give me a second here. But okay, I'm going to give the spoiler. It's SHX. Well, I firmly believe, and this is not a financial advice, but I firmly believe that buying SHX right now is like buying XRP at 20 cents. Just saying. It has been one of the greatest assets to trade the cycle. We have spoken about this on the turning point multiple times, how you could just keep trading it. Every time it was increasing 300, 400%, sell the top, wait for the correction, buy the bottom, repeat the cycle. I did this. I don't know about you, Versa. I did this at least 4 or 5 times during this cycle, especially because SHX has a lower market cap. So it doesn't follow the markets on the same way as the majority of crypto assets that just follow blindly BTC. So it kind of is detached from this Bitcoin governance, and that allows you to do the simple trading mechanisms that you can just, and I'm not talking about leverage, it's just spot trading. And what I have been doing this entire cycle, I also want to hold SHX for the long term, but I do buy SHX, sell on the top, and use that money to just buy more XRP. It's one of my favorite strategies, and that's allowed me to increase my XRP positions, bring more capital, bring more liquidity. And unfortunately, I'm having some trouble here to bring the chart. I don't know why my trading view is glitching.
Okay.
If you want to bring it, Versan, or just give me a minute here.
Take your time. I mean,
yeah, it's extremely cheap right now. And again, this is not a financial advice, but and I say this so many, I keep repeating this because I got a video of mine taken down again last week, so I don't want to get a strike on YouTube again. I'm being very careful with how I phrase words.
Yeah, Important message for anyone trying to buy SHX. I was trying to buy some actually yesterday on Stellar Term, and they had no exchanges that were available to make the trade. And I looked at my wife and said, "Oh my God, sweetheart, see, I told people this was going to happen." And, I was telling people that some friends that eventually they would SHX would be harder and harder to buy. So you can't get it on Stellar Term right now. So that's big because I've been telling people for a very long time to purchase it under Stellar Term. Yes, there are some places to buy it. Somebody said Kraken. Thank you for that. And I believe Lobster still, but I wouldn't keep any assets in Lobster. Just be very careful with that. For those who are asking what SHX really is, I do encourage you to go watch some of our older videos, maybe last year, but I'll be happy to very briefly describe it. It's a layer that was built on Stellar Network. That's very important. And it is essentially a bridge connecting liquidity infrastructure. So we can tie that back to Ripple. And they're bridging fiat and digital assets within the Stellar Network. Interestingly, Ripple has been a heavy investor into SHX Stronghold. So Ripple has been investing in Stellar's infrastructure. That's something to be mindful of. What does that tell you? That there potentially is that complementary relationship. But SHX, their function is very practical. If I was trying to put it, it provides basically liquidity within the Stellar ecosystem by bridging liquidity. And that helps. And I'm sure there are other use cases for it too, but it's just an operational layer. That's the way I see it. It's the plumbing basically between institutional and retail sides of the ecosystem within the XLM network. So again, there's this complementary relationship with a certain few assets. Velo as well. I'm very bullish on Velo. We've talked about that before. It's a credit debt issuance ecosystem for the XLM holder. Very important. I think Amazon has a partnership with them. Visa and MasterCard do as well, which is interesting because Visa and MasterCard have one with Ripple as well. So there's just so much confirmation that some of these assets do have a real use case. I think SHX is a hidden player, very similar to how XRP was long before anyone started talking about it. But they have an incredible use case. They have incredible relationships also with IBM and the IMF, International Monetary Fund. They're also being regulated to a degree by the Bill Gates Foundation. You could find that on one of my posts from 2020. What was it? 2023, I think. So yeah, it has a use case. And that's where I find it very interesting. My favorite assets now in this ecosystem digitally are 3 layers, one system. It's like a unified infrastructure. You have XRP for settlement and institutional liquidity. You have XLM, which is targeting, again, retail and consumer inclusion. And then you have SHX, which is a liquidity infrastructure and bridge between the fiat and crypto in that ecosystem. And if I was to go with any 2 crypto networks that perform the best, that are definitely being regulated, and sure, all these other assets people keep asking about, I believe they are complementary to what RippleNet has encapsulated, which is essentially all the financial infrastructure. So everything else that comes after or does survive, if they're not tied to toxic stablecoins, because stablecoins will collapse eventually. I do believe that the ones that do survive will be complementary to that ecosystem that's already been decided and regulated. And it targets a specific niche or use case within that ecosystem. Supply chains, identity, AI interoperability. A lot of people are going to say IOTA for that kind of infrastructure. So again, select assets are going to survive. They are going to decouple from everything that is tied to debt and speculative. And I think that's when you're going to really have a reset. Something else I'd like to add, this is speculative, but back in 2022, I was reading a few articles and I found a relationship between Jed McCaleb and Starlink, which is owned by Elon Musk. We all know that. I know for a fact, and I have documents for this, that Stellar is working directly with the United Nations. And their motto, you guys are all familiar with it, it's Bank the Unbanked Initiative. Okay. This is where it gets a little interesting. I mean, they've been launching all these satellites and providing grids, and I've read the reports about providing free internet access and financial inclusion at the foundational level. Well, Stellar is building that framework quietly, and they're leading the charge while we're talking always about XRP. When you look at some of the other signals, Elon Musk just made a statement recently about saying, this was like 4 days ago. He said money will eventually become worthless. And he said that a universal basic income is going to be inevitable. And when you combine that statement with Stellar's mission and the ongoing projects that they're doing, I strongly believe that the next upcoming X payment system is going to run on the Stellar network, not the XRP network. And there are a variety of strategic technical reasons I don't want to get into right now, but it's really Stellar who's been at the forefront of stablecoin issuance. They've been at the forefront of CBDCs, which are essentially a UBI. You could disguise it any way you want. So there's a hidden relationship that's systemic there that no one's talking about, not even myself. And ironically, even within the XRP community, but I do see a relationship there. The takeaway is that I think XRP is the strongest bridge and settlement asset, but Stellar is quietly laying other infrastructure and different foundation, where I think the next wave of global payments is going to be within that Stellar infrastructure as well. So again, complementary relationship. Diversify your portfolio is really what I'm saying.
Nicely said, Versan. Yes, they have different use cases, although they share very similar technology. But when you really see for the foundation of Stellar, well, you have already Ukraine building its CBDC on top of Stellar network, and when you look to Stellar's motto, that's actually bank them banks. Hence why micropayments are said to be processed on Stellar network versus Ripple, that's focusing more on the institutional use case side of the story with cross-border payments. And the reason I believe both came out, we all know the XRP ledger was created by Jed McCaleb, Arthur Brito, and David Schwartz, and then Jed just left from Ripple and proceeded to create Stellar. I don't think he did that for competition purposes. It's more somehow to bypass the competition laws in the United States. You couldn't have one single big company that would capture all of the section from micropayments to institutional payments and cross-border payments. Hence why they decided to create and roll out what is called today as Stellar. And right here I have the SHX. I just wanted to show how clear is this cycle. Imagine every time you could buy here in the bottom and just sell here on the top and just repeat the cycle, and you see that it happened again, and then the dip came here and you had the opportunity to sell here. The dip comes and then it goes all the way up to 0.003 once again, and now we are basically at the bottom once again. So make your decision. Do you think this is going to stay like this forever, or we're going to repeat the previous cycles? Well, I do have an answer for that, and that's why I am positioning myself on SHX right now. Now, one thing that we have to pay attention is that you want to have SHX on Stellar. It is indeed, it has interoperability. It also exists on, is it on Ethereum? No, not on Ethereum. Which
it is
the
on
other
Ethereum. It's on Ethereum, but if you're buying an asset that was built on Stellar, you might as well buy it on the Stellar network where it's safer and more secure. The other angle to this, I'll keep it very short and quick, is that when I first bought SHX, I did try to sell the first time, it shot up. And I realized, like, oh my God, I had to pay a heavier fee. It wasn't that much because Ethereum has evolved a little bit, but not enough to what's transitioning in the world. It can't carry the issues in the ecosystem on its back. So if Ethereum does survive, it's going to be because of other infrastructure and the whole JP Morgan ETHgate scandal. Anyways, when I tried to take the SHX and sell it or convert it back into Ethereum so I can sell it, it did cost a bit. Now,
a lot.
XLM, you could do it on the XLM network. You could do it for like 0.00 something, right? No friction at all. And that saves you a lot of money.
You want to make sure you have SHX on XLM and not on Ethereum. And yes, I think one of the easiest ways you can get, I know a lot of people have difficulties to find on exchanges, especially in the United States. Well, I speak from the European perspective. You can get on Maxi, you can also get on Bitrue, and I think these are the two major ones. But you can always leverage the Lobster wallets. And basically, one of the easiest ways is to get send XLM to Lobster, convert to SHX, and then you can just withdraw the SHX on XLM and send to some better alternative. I like to use Ledger. It's possible as well. You can just send to Ledger. And I think that's a nice way to secure your SHX. Versan, do you want to take some questions here from the audience in the last, we have another 14 minutes, or do you want to move perhaps to another topic?
I mean, I would like to discuss a little bit about how the market is going to climb higher as a result of stable coins. You have to understand that there's so many angles to this. See, everything right now is built on synthetic liquidity. Eventually, that's all going to collapse. So be mindful that the reason I said this bull run will be very short lived. My brother agrees with me on this as well. He has a little more detailed analysis on it as far as the charts. But we are seeing the same patterns. It's just this time you have a different driver of liquidity. And that's what the stable coins are going to do. Now, why do I think the bull run is going to be short lived? It may differ from my brother's views, but I think it's going to be short lived because we're going to realize somebody is going to set the narrative to realize, like, hey, you know what? These stable coins are toxic assets again. And as a result of that, you have the exposure now to Tether, to USDC potentially. I think they are regulated. I'm sure they are. But ultimately, it's going to just be a lifeline for something that is inevitably going to fail anyways. And that's why, again, you don't invest in stable coins. Because essentially you're part of the problem then, because you're just giving more reason to issue new debt. And that's all still tied to dollars. But stable coins are a temporary solution to park your money if you want to buy something in the crypto universe, right? Ultimately, my strategy has been, if you are taking profits in crypto for sovereignty reasons and because everything is going digital, try your best to get it into the bank, get it into cash as fast as possible so you can actually deploy that cash into something with anonymity. For instance, buying gold and silver, or platinum even, or commodities. It doesn't even have to be precious metals. It could be anything of value, but something physical, something tangible. That's real sovereignty. Because, I mean, again, going back to the WEF documents and the World Bank and the IMF, they talk about digital identities. They talk about monitoring your transactions. This is a reality that I think eventually people are going to figure out. It'll be too late then. And you're going to look back and say, well, why didn't I buy more gold? Why didn't I buy more precious metals where I actually have control outside of a digital system? So be mindful of that. That's all I'm saying. We had some great mentors. We really did. And we're just trying to share our strategy with you. I mean, when you talked about the whole SHX moving up and down, I've profited on that microcycle, at least four times.
Same.
And I have generated over 100K as a result of SHX alone, playing it back and forth, but very big buys, right? And then 80% sells, and then big buys again. What have I been doing with all those profits? It's true. I could have bought a new car. I could have bought other things that would make me feel better, maybe in the moment. But instead, I bought large amounts of gold. I bought more silver, and I started buying platinum. I shared that with you. I sleep better at night knowing that I'm wealthier and safer and more secure. So, it's something the next generation is really losing, like understanding the importance of owning tangible value. And the whole idea of own nothing and be happy is by definition a tokenized economy. So that's where we're going. That's what you should be doing with your profits. Don't put it in a stable coin and just let it sit there and earn 5% interest, 3%. I think RLUSD is now paying 5% interest. And
Not keeping up with inflation.
It's not keeping
It's
up
not
with
keeping
inflation.
up
And
with
the funny
inflation.
thing is, yeah, I tested it out. I'm not kidding. In a month, I had like $6,000 sitting there. It didn't generate anything but a few cents for me, or a few dollars, I'm sorry. And I said, this is so stupid. So I unstaked it, and I had to wait. That's friction. Why are we having friction on assets that can be moving in seconds? It's all about fees and intermediaries and control. So the ETF is no different. Okay. Big conflict of interest there. Own the underlying assets, position yourself for the future, and store your crypto on a cold storage. Stop putting in these institutional custody grade institutions. I'm telling you, there's a narrative over there. I just don't want to say it because I don't want to get attacked by people I know in this ecosystem. And is Paxos Gold good? Great question. No, it's not. They say the bars are in London, for instance, and or some other jurisdiction. But if capital controls are implemented, and that has happened in history as far as war, not saying we're going to war, but if you look at the reality, not the BS headlines, we are ramping up for another war. We are in a currency war right now. So the cycle is anticipating that we might go to war. And if war does come, historically, they have implemented capital controls where your gold can be confiscated. If we have a financial crisis, it's already in law. It's called, I think it's something called SIFI, if I'm not mistaken. Jim Rickards talked about this, where they can essentially confiscate your assets overnight to basically bail out the banks that are too big to fail. That's theft. That's highway robbery. So I'm just saying, be mindful. We've seen this over and over and over again, and it's like nobody changes their thinking. I don't trust the system that's being built. I do understand it. I see the potential to profit on it. I see the opportunity, but I don't trust it. There's a difference, right? From being doom and gloom and being realistic. So anyways, yes, guys, hope I didn't hurt anyone's feelings in there, because I know people are very sensitive and emotionally tied to their assets.
There's a quick question that I will answer, and this person asks, when is the time to sell BTC so I don't lose my life savings? Well, I will not say a number. I will just say I don't think you should have your life savings at first hand on BTC. That's all I'm going to say about this question. Now, coming back to what Versan was explaining, I think we are the last line. I mean, perhaps the last ones in our bloodline that are going to be able to afford gold, perhaps the only ones that can still get something tangible, because the narrative of you're going to own nothing and be happy, that's actually not just a narrative, it's happening in real time.
Day
And I
by
can
day.
bring day by day. It's insane. I have been following a very similar strategy to you, Versan, just that, well, I'm based, for the ones that don't know, I'm based in Cyprus and Greece right now. So I have been pulling out profits from this, especially trading activity, just like you did with SHX. I did very similar returns, and I just buy properties. I do that. I know the European real estate is 100% different from America. I think it's cannot even be compared, but you have this great opportunity in Greece, for example. And what I see is that the newer generations, in most, I'm talking for most European capitals, they will not even dream of the possibility to afford buying a property like I am doing right now. Take my own cash, not rely on the banks, go there and pay it. For multiple reasons, not only for taxation, heavy taxation, but because the monthly salary, it has become mathematically impossible for the average person to afford a home in the average European cities without getting a loan to the bank. And that's what they are doing to the population. Even if they do 3 4 different jobs, it's still mathematically impossible. They're going to save enough money so that they can find a home, buy it with cash. This is finishing. And I think we here investing in digital assets, we are perhaps the last people in our generation that can still afford to buy substantial amounts of gold, silver, properties, real estate, anything that has tangible value and not only holding to fiat currencies. Just look how much the dollar and the euro are getting devaluated. I have said this already here on the turning point. I think 40 or 30 euros was more valuable than 100 euros. I mean, if you take 5 years ago, 50 euros was more valuable than 100 years in 2025. If you take before the pandemic, it's insane how much value it's losing. And you
Hmm.
can see that on the groceries. You can see that when you buy clothes. You can see that from the price of rent. You can see that in every single aspect. People here in Europe, they have to take multiple jobs to afford for the most basic necessities of a human being, to the point that in the big European cities, people can't afford to rent a home anymore. That's how terrible the economical situation has come. We came from a generation, if we take our grandparents or parents, they were able to afford to buy a home without perhaps a loan to the bank. And right now the situation is so bad in Europe that the average person, let's take Italy, Greece, Spain, Portugal, whatever country. Greece is an exception, but take the others. Let's say if they own
Is it?
1,000, they own 1,000 euros per month just to rent. They're gonna spend more than the 1,000 euros, and that's how insane. So people are renting rooms in a shared apartment. That's
Mm.
the reality in Europe right now. Maybe you don't see that on the television, but I know what I am talking about. So I think we really need to focus on this opportunity, not to adopt a victim's mindset, but to actually be thankful that we have understanding of what's happening. Most people, they're just on the phone scrolling on TikTok. The world is burning outside and they don't even realize how serious the
Yeah.
economical situation is becoming. It's actually, there is no turning point anymore for the economical situation.
Mm.
However, I am optimistic because we understand this transition right now and we can take massive advantage. Basically there is no competition. Your competition today is watching videos on TikTok and hearing the CNN on television. So we have to take advantage of that and position ourselves accordingly.
Agreed. I mean, more importantly, we have each other, all of us. And again, we're not trying to necessarily time things correctly. It's more about anticipating the market movers and what the agenda really is. And of course, where money is going. Fiat currency is, again, not what it used to be. The party is indeed over. It's just, it hasn't hit the headlines yet. Like David would say, we haven't had the funeral yet. And I have proof of this. For instance, the average young person today, including like myself, right, 32 years old, ready to have a family, just got married. Um, I won't be able to realistically be able to buy a home, depending, of course, on the outcome of how this market moves. I can purchase a home now, but I'd be insane to buy a home in my where I'm at right now financially.
And
And even
Vincent, sorry to interrupt you. And you make 10 or 20 times more money than the average person your age. That's how insane the
I do
situation
make good
is.
money. I'm grateful to God for that, and of course for the community and all the support. But it's even then, if I'm making good money and trading and building wealth with gold, it's not enough. Like I see it, I can buy it, but I won't realize the consequences until after I make the purchase, factoring in how fast currency is devaluing. So again, the average person can't even buy a home, and retirement right now in the United States, it requires at least $1.2 million just to have a modest standard of living. And if you look at the reality, it's harsher than that because layoffs are only beginning. So you have to think about all these things, right? And that's why, again, I go back to like other assets like gold and XRP. And I think this is what the big banks and the institutions are really doing because, sure, in a world where people keep saying the dollar will remain the reserve currency, but it continues to be abused. It continues to be weaponized. It's mismanaged. It's corrupt. Institutions and sovereign nations are already looking for a neutral, free floating currency or a bridge asset where capital isn't really trapped or weaponized. It actually moves, it's free circulating. Again, that's the direction where we're heading. You need some sort of settlement asset that can carry a multipolar world on its back. And that's why understanding XRP isn't optional. It's the key to understanding where the next phase of global markets are going. Whole different discussion. There's another comment I saw in there from Autumn. She was asking the safest places to protect your crypto cold storage. Overall, anything in digital assets, you need cold storage, which is the first line of defense, in my opinion. It's off the internet, it's offline, and that's what keeps your assets entirely secure and away from threats in this ecosystem. And in my opinion, I would see threats differently than hackers and scammers. I know this sounds crazy, but because I've been at this for so long, I have layers of security. I see threats as institutions. See, most people look at institutions as a place to go for safety, not me. I look at an institution and I see a threat, a direct threat. Um, and that's what I've been trying to elaborate for a very long time. So when you look at other companies out there like I Trust Capital, Caleb and Brown, listen, they can help you with certain things. All right. Long-term security, sure. Cold storage, it's the safest way to go. It ensures that you are actually in control and you can still be verified on the blockchain. That's important. The second thing is you need to protect those cold storage devices. That's why I always encourage everybody to get a Faraday bag. Faraday bag will protect your electronic devices from EMPs, just for the sake of argument, power outages, wireless hacking attempts, anything like that, malicious software that could be pushed onto every cell phone. That came from the WEF. So a Faraday bag is necessary. The best place to buy it is called Mission Darkness. Just go to their website. I have no affiliate link with them. Just go to Mission Darkness, get yourself a Faraday bag. And to secure your online presence in a digital age, there's a website called Cloaked. So cloak.com. And, they have some very incredible use cases. They have robust cybersecurity software, and that kind of regulates and monitors your identity online. And it has a strong, unique password and multi-factor authentication. So that's very important too. But there used to be a lot of my picture and my names would be on these weird websites. And that's kind of where, I had to implement this. I pay 300 something a year for it, but it's worth it. It's worth it. I feel so protected. So layers of security as we transition are the safest way to go about this. And just think about it like that. When you look at institutions, I promise you, they just want a piece of the action, when the truth is you don't even have to give them any.
And by the way, we have made a video just about cold wallets in the past. Remember this? And I guess if you go to our channel 3 or 4 months ago, we have made a full video only talking about cold wallets. And we also spoke about our favorite ones. I don't even have an affiliate link, so I just made that for the sake of demonstrating which ones I have used in the past versus, and also shared some insights. So you can find in both of our channels. So I just want to clarify, someone asked, what is Edu's website for trading? So I don't have a specific website for trading. So be careful if someone is offering you any service. What I do have is a private Telegram group where I just share insights about the markets, and sometimes I give advices specifically, for example, with SHX. I have been doing that on my private group, and you can book that on my website, but I don't have a website for trading. So be careful that you are not going to be scammed by someone pretending me. And I guess that's all. We are over 1 hour for today. Bersan, any final thoughts?
Yeah. Just don't wait away. Am I on mute? Okay, no. Just don't wait around. Take action. Filter out the noise. Stick to the facts, the fundamentals, and I promise, if you do that, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And we're here together. We're always going to try to do this podcast every Monday. We can just kind of shuffle through this together. But ultimately, it's going to depend on you, your decisions, how disciplined are you, and of course, your willingness to act. So, final thing I'd like to say, I'm honored and humbled by this entire community, and just how you guys have been patient and so supportive and kind. And, for a lot of you've been here with us from the very beginning. I know that for a fact. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. So just thank you so much. from the bottom of my heart for anyone who just took the time to listen, to learn, just to join us on this journey and trusting the process, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Drop your location in the comments so you can also help us with the algorithm. Just let us know where you are based, in which country. That helps a lot. And someone just made a donation, so I will quickly address this one. Uh, and thanks for that, by the way. And he's absolutely correct. Basically, having your crypto in exchanges is definitely not a safe approach for long-term success. So you can use exchanges as the necessary evil, if you will, to just buy your crypto there, perhaps do some trading, but don't have the majority of your assets in crypto exchanges, because not your keys, not your crypto. If the exchange goes down, so does your assets, and they will pay you back if you get lucky with dollars. So they're not
Hey,
gonna give you XRP back, and I don't
someone
want
said,
dollars.
yeah, someone said they're from Antarctica. That's incredible. I know they're joking, but I don't think you can get
That's right.
cellular service out there. My God, I wish, honestly, it would be so fun to do one of these podcasts and really go down the rabbit hole. And I mean, not crypto, but history and some of the other stuff that are happening around the world. I've researched that stuff like you wouldn't believe. I just
Same.
can't talk about
I
here. And I don't have time to go back and forth between Rumble and YouTube. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. I'm not kidding. It's like if I had the time and energy, believe me, I'd be having so much fun.
Likewise, Versan. I have the same. Just now, when I was banned, I'm still banned, by the way, but I was 3 months without making content. I was having so much free time to research other stuff other than crypto that I could go on and on forever. But yes, anyways, thank you, everyone, and we're gonna see you next Monday.
Yes. Thank you.